The whole thing kicks off in a quiet little town called Avenge in Sweden. There's this guy named Jack, and he's not just some random guy. He's a professional hitman who's made a career out of staying invisible. At the start, he's relaxing in a wooden cabin with a woman named Bella, just enjoying the moment. They're laughing. Everything feels calm, almost like he's just a regular man living a regular life for a change. But the calm doesn't last. The moment they step outside, the air goes still, and before Jack can even lock the door behind them, the sharp crack of a sniper round cuts through the silence. Someone is trying to take them both out. Jack reacts on instinct. Years of training snapping into place like a loaded spring. He dives for cover, dragging Bella down with him, while scanning for where the shot came from. Bullets rip through the wooden porch. Jack yanks out his own gun, returns fire without hesitation, and in the chaos manages to take down one of the attackers. His mind is racing while his hands stay steady. The whole thing lasts only seconds, but when the echo fades, the world feels completely different. And then the suspicion creeps in. Jack glances at Bella, still trembling, and a dark thought crosses his mind. What if she set him up? Why would anyone know where he was unless someone told them? He's been hunted too many times to brush that off. She pleads with him to call the police, her voice shaky, but Jack's instincts scream louder. If she's part of this, he can't take the risk of letting her live. Cold, silent, and decisive, Jack pulls the trigger. Bella drops. He finishes off the last of the ambushers, leaving their bodies as silent witnesses to what happens when someone tries to outplay him. Then he vanishes from Abiisco like smoke in the wind. A few days later, Jack surfaces in Italy. Rome, to be exact. The noise, the people, the life all around. It's the opposite of that lonely Swedish cabin. He meets up with an old friend named Felix, who's more than just a friend. He's the guy who hands out contracts from the shadows, the one all hitmen answer to. Over espresso in a quiet corner, Felix breaks the news. Bella wasn't involved. She was just an unlucky woman caught in the crossfire. Jack's face doesn't change, but the words cut deeper than any bullet. Felix doesn't dwell on it, though. He shifts the topic and gives Jack a new assignment. He wants Jack to go underground for a while in a remote hill town called Castelvecchio. There, Jack will meet another agent and put together a custom sniper rifle for an upcoming mission. No names, no details, just the usual shadowy rules. Jack doesn't argue. He's learned not to. He hops into his old vintage car, the kind of car that makes you imagine leather gloves and cigarette smoke, and drives off toward the quiet hills of central Italy. By the time he reaches Castelvecchio, Jack's worn down from the endless drive. The streets are cobblestone, narrow, and empty. Felix has already arranged a small apartment for him. Nothing fancy, just somewhere to disappear. Jack drops his bags and crashes on the bed like a man who hasn't slept in weeks. The next morning, he wanders through the town. He watches the way the sun hits the church tower, notes every alley, every blind corner, every place someone could hide with a rifle. He walks like a tourist, but thinks like prey. Later, he calls Felix again. Enough sightseeing. He wants details about the job. Felix tells him the plan. Build a sniper rifle from scratch, perfectly tuned for a kill shot between 150 and 175 meters, with a 10-round magazine and a silencer. Jack raises an eyebrow. A weapon like that is surgical and deadly. Felix doesn't say who the target is, only that the weapon must be flawless and ready within a week. While Jack is still thinking it through, an unexpected visitor shows up, Father Benedetto, a local priest. He greets Jack warmly and, curious about the newcomer, asks what brings him to their quiet town. Jack slips on a mask without blinking. He tells Benedetto he's a travel photographer working on an article about small European towns. The priest seems to buy it, or maybe he just doesn't care, and invites him over for a drink. After sharing a few glasses of wine and listening to Benedetto ramble about the history of the village, Jack heads back to his apartment. But he doesn't rest. He starts training again, pushing his body, testing escape routes, marking rooftops and back exits like a man mapping out his survival. Days pass. Jack keeps a low profile. He sets up shop in a corner cafe, and it's there he meets Matilda, an elegant woman with sharp eyes who talks like she's measuring every word. She's no random local. She's the contact Felix mentioned. She'll be the one receiving the weapon when it's done. They speak in code, talking about equipment while slipping diagrams under coffee cups. Matilda lists out exactly what she needs. 10-round magazine, silent as a whisper, with enough stopping power to drop a target in one shot. Jack listens, calculating angles in his head. She warns him about the flash. He promises to reduce it, but warns that might reduce range. She's fine with it. She just needs the job done. After they part, Jack picks up a package from the post office, specialized parts for the build. He lays them out in his apartment, like a surgeon prepping for an operation. Piece by piece, the rifle starts to take shape under his hands. But halfway through, something shifts. He loses focus, frustration boiling quietly. Instead of forcing it, he steps away. He goes looking for distraction. That night, he visits a brothel and meets Clara, a woman whose smile hides tired eyes. They spend the night together. No words, just silence and warmth. By the next morning, Jack's back at work. The deadline is crawling closer. He visits a local auto shop to find custom materials to finish the build. On the way back, he unexpectedly crosses paths with Clara again. She smiles. This time, Jack doesn't walk past. He asks her to meet him again. Then he locks himself inside his apartment and works until his hands ache. Hours pass. Metal and wood merge under his steady grip. Finally, the rifle stands completed, sleek and deadly. The next morning, he tests it. But something feels off. The shots land well, but not perfectly. The weapon isn't living up to his impossible standards. He can't afford flaws. After packing up, he goes back out, hoping to see Clara again. But she isn't there that night. The brothel is quiet, her room dark. Disappointed, he leaves. And that's when he notices something chilling. A man standing too still across the street. Watching, Jack ducks into a shop and waits. When he glances back, the man is gone. The following day, Jack meets Matilda again. They drive out to a remote forest clearing, far from any prying eyes, to test the completed rifle together. Jack adjusts the scope, loads a magazine, and fires a round that slices through the air like lightning. Muzzle velocity is about 360 miles per hour, he mutters. Matilda checks the target through binoculars and nods, impressed. The shot is clean, precise. Exactly what she asked for. But she frowns at the scope. The binoculars aren't sharp enough. That's the only flaw. Everything else is perfect. He nodded silently, not saying much, and then offered to drive her to the station. Once she was gone, the silence around him felt heavier than ever. Jack found his mind wandering back to Clara. He missed her. Not just her touch, but the strange calm she gave him, a calm he hadn't felt in years. That night, he slipped back into the dim streets and wandered toward the places where men went to forget their lives. By some stroke of luck, Claire was there. They ended up together again, tangled in warmth that made him forget, at least for a few hours, who he really was. When he returned to his rented flat later that night, the reality of his world came crashing back. He shut the door, blocked out the noise from the street, and sat down with the rifle. Piece by piece, he adjusted it, tightening screws, aligning the scope, smoothing down every imperfection as if the metal could somehow mirror the control he desperately needed over his life. The next morning, he wandered into a small cafe for breakfast. He hadn't expected to see her again so soon, but there Clara was, casual, glowing in the sunlight pouring through the window. She smiled at him, and for the first time, something about her smile felt personal, not just part of the job she did. Out of nowhere, she asked him if he'd like to go out with her sometime, on one of her rare days off. Jack was caught off guard, but he said yes. He wasn't used to being asked out. He wasn't used to feeling like just a man. After breakfast, Jack headed back toward his place, but the feeling of being watched slid over him like a cold breeze. Someone was following him again. He could sense it in the rhythm of footsteps behind him, just slightly out of sync. Years of paranoia sharpened into instinct. Jack let him get closer, then suddenly cut down a side street, slipping out of sight, and circled back behind him. The man was armed, silent, focused, another hired gun. This one was from a Swedish branch, sent to clean up the mess Jack had left behind in Abiesco. Jack set a trap, waiting until the man, a hitman named Hunter, passed under a dark archway. The first shot rang out and Hunter returned fire, and just like that, the quiet Italian alley became a war zone. The two assassins moved like shadows, bullets ricocheting off stone walls. Hunter's clip ran dry first. He bolted. Jack pursued him without a word, his face calm, movements deadly precise. In seconds, Hunter lay dead on the cobblestones, his blood soaking into the cracks. Jack stood over the body for a moment, then quietly dialed Felix. He told him Swedish operatives had tracked him down, that it was only a matter of time before more came. Felix listened, then brushed it off like it was nothing. "Stay put," Felix ordered. "Finish the job first." Jack wanted to argue, but didn't. He hung up. The next day, he met Clara again. This time, It wasn't just for a night. They walked, talked, and laughed like two normal people. But Jack's eyes were never still. He watched every stranger that passed, every shadow that moved wrong. He knew there could be more hunters out there. Despite the danger, he couldn't stop thinking about her, about what it might be like to live a life where he wasn't always checking over his shoulder. Soon, he asked Clara to meet him by the river. She agreed, happy, almost childlike. They spent the afternoon there, sitting on rocks, dangling their feet in the water, stealing quiet kisses. Then Jack's fingers brushed against something hard in her back. A gun. His heart froze. For a split second, the world tilted. Memories of Bella, of that snowy cabin in Sweden, of how wrong he'd been before. Was Clara another trap? His hand almost reached for his own weapon. Almost. But this time, he forced himself to breathe. He asked her, gently but firmly, why she was carrying a gun. Clara blinked at him like the question was strange, then explained that it wasn't about him at all. It was about survival. Too many women like her had been attacked, beaten, or killed walking home from work. The gun wasn't for hunting anyone. It was just to stay alive. Jack listened and stayed silent. Deep down, he believed her. As they walked back, Clara opened up more than she ever had. Out of nowhere, she confessed something that hit Jack harder than any bullet. She wanted to leave this place. She wanted to run away with him. Anywhere. She didn't care where. She just wanted to be with him. Jack smiled faintly, but inside he was torn in half. He couldn't promise her anything. He wasn't sure he'd live long enough to keep that promise, even if he made it. That night, he lay awake staring at the ceiling. For years, his only plan was to survive the next job. But now there was Clara, and for the first time, he found himself wanting something else, peace. By morning, he made up his mind. Jack called Felix and told him flatly that he was done. No more jobs, no more contracts, no more blood. He wanted out. Felix paused for a long moment, then said he understood. If Jack would just complete this one last mission, Felix promised to let him walk away. Jack agreed, but something in Felix's voice itched in the back of his mind. The moment they hung up, Felix picked up another phone. He called Matilda, and he gave her a new job, kill Jack once he delivers the rifle. Jack knew Felix too well not to suspect something. He quietly reassembled the rifle, altering the mechanism deep inside, the way only its maker could. By the time the day of the handoff arrived, the weapon looked perfect, but it was a trap. He met Matilda in a quiet alley, handed over the rifle, and told her this was goodbye. She gave him his final payment. Jack even joked she should buy herself a watch to remember him by. She didn't laugh. Then they walked separate ways. Later that day, the whole town came alive for the carnival. Lights, music, people spilling into the streets, chaos wrapped in joy. Jack found Clara in the crowd and pulled her aside. He told her the words he'd been afraid to say. He wanted to leave this city with her. Start over. Live like real people. Clara's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled. She said yes. High above them, on a rooftop, Matilda took position. She loaded the rifle Jack had built, sighted him in, and exhaled. She squeezed the trigger. The gun backfired instantly, exploding into her face. She crumpled without a sound. Jack didn't even flinch. He'd known. He'd known all along. He slipped away from the crowd and found Clara again. He told her to go to the river and wait for him. He'd meet her there soon. He just had one last thing to do. Felix. Jack found him where he knew he'd be, alone and smug, thinking he'd won. He didn't give Felix time to speak. One shot ended it, but Felix managed to fire once too. The bullet tore into Jack's stomach. Bleeding, staggering, Jack climbed into his car. He pressed a hand to the wound and drove, each minute blurring. Only one thought in his head, get to Clara. By the time he reached the river, the pain had dulled into numbness. Clara was there, waiting, just like she promised. Jack smiled faintly as the world dimmed around him. He had kept his word. They could leave this place now. The life of Jack the Hitman was over. The man Clara loved was all that was left. And that wraps up today's video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit the like button, drop a comment to share your thoughts, and subscribe if you haven't already. It really helps the channel grow. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.